Welcome into the Tour Coach, everybody. I'm your host, Tony Ruggiero here. Appreciate all of you that follow us, that listen to us, and participate with us. If you're new to this, my name's Tony Ruggiero. I'm a golf coach and teacher down in Palm Beach Gardens area at Old Palm, where I spend a big chunk of my time, where I've lived in Mobile, Alabama, and have a studio here for a long time, and travel around the South and the country as well, teaching folks on the Live Tour, the PGA Tour, LPGA, Epson tours, colleges, and so forth, as well as anybody that wants to get better. And these are a collection of my conversations and the stories and the people that I meet on the road or that I teach with, whether they're coaches, players, sometimes students that have interesting stories. All of it is an effort to bring you the people that I find fascinating, that I find have a story, that I find can help all of you improve your golf game or improve your coaching, or just fuel your passion for getting better at the game. So we hope you like the Tour Coach, and if you like it, please do us a favor, like it, subscribe to it, share it, and also want to remind all of you that here at the Dew Sweepers, we've been really making an effort. I know a lot of you've reached out, really made an effort to put out a lot of content. I know the instruction game is changing. There's more and more content. That's where those of you that are passionate about and have a desire to get better at the game go, is to the sources of content. You can always find us on the Dew Sweeper on Instagram, but in particular, our Dew Sweeper TV on YouTube. All you got to do is go to YouTube and type in Dew Sweeper TV. I appreciate the support. Continue to listen to the Tour Coach here. Please like and subscribe and share it as we continue to grow the Dew Sweeper movement, and would encourage all of you to come see us for one of our retreats through the summer or into the fall down at Old Palm Golf Club, or we've got one in August up at Bluebell as well. And come hang out and improve at the game of golf. And now that I'm a tequila man, come hang out afterwards. We'll tape a little podcast, and you can drink an Epic Western with me. There's no better drink I am finding to relax with, chill with, whether it's on the water, on the boat, fishing, or hanging out after a good day on the tee. That's Epic Western. And, of course, as we get ready to head into these conversations that are going to help you with the game of golf, none of this would be possible without the folks at Bushnell, Shrixon, Vineyard Vines, Epic Western, as I just mentioned, and my boy Mitch McConnell and Buick GMC, Taylor Martino and Rowan, and Blaine Stokely. They're the best. They support the Dew Sweeper wherever we go, whether it's on the airwaves here in our content or on the radio. So keep listening here to the Tour Coach, and please like and subscribe us, and we hope you like what you hear. So thanks for everybody joining us, and we've got a bunch of folks that will be listening to this when we send out the link. But joining me is Hall of Famer, one of the greatest teachers ever, somebody I've had the honor to hang out and let him watch a few videos on my phone before, Mr. Chuck Cook from you in Austin, aren't you, Chuck?
In Austin at the University of Texas Golf Club.
Yeah, it's a good spot.
Yeah.
Good spot.
Yeah,
you've seen a couple of good players come there.
A couple of good players came out of there. Jordan Scotty Scheffler. So
yeah, if you got to hang your hat on a couple, that's probably two pretty good ones. So I said before we came on, we were sharing stories before I was talking about Hank, and we were talking about different things, Tom Ness, and I think the first time I was ever around you was with some of those guys at the golf school that Rob Akins did up here, as well as the Gurus of Golf in Memphis. And the one thing, you've always been so generous to me anytime I've run into you and shared a video. You've always been willing to take a look, and I've always just been impressed with your passion you're always asking questions. You're always trying to learn, but you're also always willing to kind of share time with those of us coming up behind you. So I just thought it'd be good to kind of pick your brain and get some insights with all these. Jackson can tell you we've got like 300 young teachers that listen to this and get this stuff, and then we put it on the podcast. So I just kind of want to talk with you a little bit about, first, like, what got you started in coaching and teaching, first of all, and and what advice to younger coaches and teachers coming up from what you've learned coming up along the way would you pass along to them?
Well, I'm just real fortunate that I've got a good pedigree with the people that I've trained under. Needless to say, the first guy I was an assistant pro up in Indianapolis, and the head pro there was a guy named Lloyd Watkins, who had been Horton Smith's assistant pro. So Horton Smith won the first Masters, so that was a lot of history. And he was a great bench pro, great player, and stuff like that. And I learned a lot. And then I went down and worked for Kent Casey in Evansville. And Kent, after leaving Evansville, became the pro at Congressional. And so he was very highly regarded pro. And while I was in Indiana, I was looking for something to do in the winter. And I called the Golf Digest people. I called Davis Love Jr. And I said, yeah, I'd like to come down and watch you guys this winter. And Davis says, I'm sorry, I don't have any time. Click. I go, oh. So I called I called Peter Costas, and Peter was real nice. And he said, yeah, he said, let me put you in touch with somebody. And they put me in touch with, he said, well, will you come down here? We'll put you to work. He says, we're not going to just let you come down and watch. And so I went down, I worked as a range assistant for one season, and, where I would tee balls and uh, move bags and pick up balls and everything like that for the students there. Got to listen to some of the best instruction by those guys. At that time, they had the best teachers in the world there. They had Bob Toski, Jim Flick, and Peter Costas, Davis Love Jr., Paul Runyon, all these guys that were the best of the best at that time, all together in one grouping. And it was great to be able to learn from them. That's really where I got started. Trying to think of teaching as a profession. And then after that, I worked some golfing machine stuff with Ben Doyle and went through that whole program and got a doctorate in that. And then I worked with Mac O'Grady as a correlation to that, and learned an awful lot from Mac. And then we used to do a lot of seminars for the PGA with I remember one particular seminar where we had myself and David Ledbetter and Hank Haney. And this is sort of the way it goes. So they'd say, well, I did my presentation. I said, yeah, at P3, I want to have the shaft pointing at the target line. And David Ledbetter had said, yeah, I want to have the shaft pointed inside the target line. And Hank Haney said, yeah, I want to have the shaft pointed outside the target line. And so they asked him, they said, well, David, why do you want it pointed inside the target line? And he said, well, it's because good players, the biggest problem they have is dropping the club too far inside and swinging out on the ball too much. And he said, if I get it upright enough, they can drop it and they won't be under. And they asked Hank Haney, and Hank says, well, the biggest problem that good players have is they drop the club inside out, and they too much, drop it inside too much. And so I found that if you lay the club off, then you'll have to tip the shaft coming down. You won't be inside. So, but that was how it went. We shared, everybody shared with everybody else. And so, that was just the mood that we all had. Nobody was jealous of anybody else, and nobody criticized other teachers or anything like that. And it was a great time. And so that was how I got started in teaching. Started with the Golf Digest schools, and then actually the Golf Digest schools were hired to do the program for a golf academy in Austin, where I am now. And it was the Academy of Golf, and it was at a Jack Nicklaus facility. And it was the best teaching facility in the country, maybe the world at that time. We had 3 practice holes, a par 4, par 5, par 3. We had covered hitting, which was unusual back then. This is 1980. And then we had bent grass, Bermuda grass, chipping areas and putting areas and so forth, the classrooms.
Ahead of its time, really. Had to be ahead of its time for that.
So I wanted to do a program then that was ahead of its time. And so what I did is I hired Ralph Mann to come in and be a biomechanical engineer for golf. And it was his first experience with golf. He had been a track biomechanical engineer. And then I hired Dick Coop he was an educational psychologist from the University of North Carolina, to help us with the psychology of the game and how to teach and all that sort of stuff. And then I hired Al Vermeil, who was the strength coach for the 49ers, and later on for Jordan, the Chicago Bulls, to be our fitness expert. And then Dave Pels did our short game. So,
Pretty good
so
group.
we had it rocking and rolling then. And that's, you're asking me about where I got my curiosity. And that's where I got it, was by hearing all of these different theories and things, about how to swing, and then dealing with facts, getting with biomechanical engineers to talk about what was really right and stuff like that. So
That had to be way on the early end of biomechanics, correct? I mean,
oh yeah, he was the first one there. I think there was one guy that was a biomechanic guy in California that had done some, but Ralph got started, but it was useless information. It was useless. We had one swing, I had Nicholas on there. I had Tom Kite. I had a bunch of great players that we filmed. And so what it did is they put dots on your wrist, on your elbows, on your shoulder joints, on your fingers, your nose, your forehead, and all that sort of stuff. And so then we would measure it from P1 to P10 and tell the students how far each one of their dots was away from the model. So your inside wrist dot is 2 millimeters to the below the dot for the model.
that's great. Thanks.
Really great information, And we had this thick book for one swing. I mean, it was hilarious, but that was the beginning. And we started doing other golf academies for Nicholas. We did one at Grand Cypress, where my assistant went down there, took over. Fred Griffin took over that job, and we moved Ralph's laboratory down there. And so Ralph had his laboratory down there. We were going to do 3 Nicholas academies, one in Austin, one in Orlando, and then one in Phoenix. And Jack said, well, wait on the one in Phoenix until we get Desert Mountain done. Had Desert Highlands, we were going to do it, but he said, just wait for that. And by then, so we were going to have golf academies all around, and Jim Flick took over that. So that one. So that's sort of how I got going with that, with the technical aspects of it. We were way ahead of our time. We had everybody coming to us too. I mean, we had a slew of people that could come and taking lessons and so forth.
Did any of the science and the technology of that stuff through that period of time, did you change what you taught or what you thought based on some of the stuff you found? Just curious. And then fast forward it to some of the stuff now with obviously 3D and, force place, all stuff. So we have so much stuff. Like, has your thoughts on some things changed or evolved a lot since as you've gone along?
Well, things evolved, every year. We were probably the biggest influence on my teaching was one time I got to watch Ben Hogan practice, and I got to watch him for 2 days hit balls. And Phil Rogers and I were teaching golf schools in Austin at the academy there. And we were teaching what Phil teaches, and what Phil was teaching at that time was take it outside, loop it inside, and have an underhanded flip release through impact, and our students could knock the crap out of it off a tee with an iron, but off the ground. They would pat it or top it. But anyway, so we thought that was the way to go. We're going to hit high hooks and everything like that. And so I go up and I watch Hogan, and the first thing he does is lay it off and cup his wrist, and it comes down. It looks like he's going to hit it with the sole of the club. It's coming in sideways like that. And I'm expecting it to shank first, and then when it doesn't shank, I'm expecting it to go high right, and it comes out medium height straight ball every time. And so I said, uh-oh, we're not teaching that. This guy could really control his ball. And so I studied that a lot. and learned a lot about, I talked to Toski about it a lot. And Toski says, yeah, oh yeah, Hogan went left so much because he had so much lag. And he says, lag means left, because you can't drag the handle with a lot of lag down the line. You get blocks and hooks and everything else. And so the handle would come around him so tight, it would look like it was an inch or two from his left hip when it came. It'd be connected all the way down almost to his wrist coming through on that left arm. And it was a different deal. And I watched that and I said, okay, that's what I want to do. I want to teach people to do that as best I can. And of all the people I saw and already studied with, the golfing machine came the closest, because they taught a lot of lag, and it was that cemented the direction I went in, where I teach basically. I haven't changed much of what I teach since 1996, and what the technology has done more than anything else is just confirmed what I'm teaching. It hadn't changed my mind about what I'm teaching. Right. And so it just says, yeah, well, you're on and which would make sense because I've had a lot of success, so you'd think I'd be doing it.
No, I was just curious because, coming up on, I always relate the stuff to, coming up under Hank, he told me not to get the golf machine book, but to let him explain the parts as I would needed to understand them. That's what he said, but, he was big on pivot, big on the club on plane, a lot of lag, swinging a little more left through. So that's, and just with all of the, the force plate stuff, as I kind of went down that road, that stuff has kind of helped me understand maybe why some guys like a Bobby Wyatt were better. Like I bought some stuff. I bought my first force plate because I had a couple guys, Bobby Wyatt and Robbie Shelton. I've picked your brain about them before way in the past, but like they were getting good, but I didn't necessarily know why. I watched them, but I kind of bought stuff because I was trying to figure out like if there was something in there I could teach other people that I couldn't see. But that stuff didn't really change anything I taught through that. It maybe helped me understand it a little better, but I still think a lot of the stuff that I learned from HJ, which I'm sure there's differences of stuff, but coming out of the golf machine and out of that stuff, still, it's very much what I teach today.
Yeah, well, it's the same for me. Basically what I do with my students, I teach what the golf machine calls the three imperatives, which are the only three things they think everybody ought to do. Is the rest of it is just options. These you can have a double shift plane or a single shift plane or no shift plane. Everything has options, and that is a good impact position. Okay, effective left wristed impact. And that's the most important thing, to compress the ball. And then 2, to come into that impact position on a plane or a line that'll compress the ball toward the target. And 3, to come down the plane to a good impact position with the right sequence, which is lag. So that means, body first, then arms, then club. If you do those 3 things, you'll be a great ball striker. And so I use that as the structure for my instruction. And it's funny, we had one girl who played in our tournament that we had, the George Hannon tournament, is junior tournament we had. We had one girl shot 88, 84. And then she came, took some lessons with me. And I told her, I said, Emma, there's 3 things you need to be a good ball striker. I said, 1, you need a good impact position. 2, you need to come into that impact position on the line that'll compress the ball toward the target. And 3, you need to have lag. And I explained that was sequence, just your timing like that. And so the next year she won the tournament, shot 71-68. She won the tournament. And I asked her, I said, Emma, what were you thinking about? She's this cute little blonde. She goes, well, I was just trying to compress the ball toward the target. And I said, oh, okay. And I said, well, how come you hitting it so far? And it was, she had picked up amazing speed. She had like 88 mile an hour 6 iron, for,
Yeah.
for a little high school girl. And I said, well, how come you're hitting it so long? She goes, lag. So, I said, well, that's a student right there now. That's all she
You
did.
know,
Just
she
what I
listened.
said.
Um, and like when I was getting started, I remember, and if anybody has any questions, go ahead and type them in. So they're not all my questions, but it was always, I remember when I started, you know, I was told pretty direct, get their grip on there pretty, to get their face square on the plane. And he told me if I could teach them to turn back, turn through, and get them to make a divot in front of the ball, he's like, you'll at least make a living and not embarrass me. Right.
Yeah.
And that's all I did for like 5 years. I mean, that's really all I did. And I started teaching young kids and juniors. And like, I mean, I still tell young teachers today, man, if you can get young people and people starting doing that, I mean, that's a heck of a way to start.
Absolutely. Yeah, it was, uh, one of my influences too that I didn't mention, which it was remiss of me, was Harvey Penny.
Mm.
He was in Austin, and I'd go watch him teach once a week. And Harvey would always strengthen grips. He
Mm-hmm.
he I never saw him weaken a grip. Although he told one guy, he told this one guy, this lawyer, Ed Turley, he said, Ed, if you keep turning your grip around to the right, eventually you'll have it back where you belong. But that was that was the only time I ever heard Harvey try to weaken a grip, but he'd always strengthen grips because he knew how how much that influenced what else they did to get the ball to go to the target. If you've got a strong grip, you're not going to come over the top. You're not going to release early unless you want to hit a pull hook. And so uh, I learned that from him real early. He was always saying, "Give me another knuckle," give me another knuckle.
Why do you think, like, to me, lag and, uh, lag and like golf machine stuff, it's almost like not a bad word. Like, I still, obviously we're talking about, but it's almost like people are afraid to say they teach that stuff now. I mean, why do you think that is? I was just curious because you've had so much success. There's so many great teachers that have tons of success teaching those principles. I was just curious.
Well, I think what happened, I think where that became out of favor was because of Brian Manzella. Brian was a big golf machine guy
Yeah.
all the time, and he was really good teacher and everything like that. But there were some things he couldn't figure out, and he misinterpreted something or whatever it was. And so when he got going with some of the gear stuff and some stuff like that, he found a way to break away from golfing machine. And then he actually started running it down. And he was such a big influence on social media that I think that everybody said, "Oh, I better not say anything good about golfing machines." And it's not for everybody. I understand that. It's not 1,000% correct. Mac O'Grady, after he won the first tournament that he won, I think it was LA, he spent $64,000, which was his winning check, went back then to the UCLA Biomechanical Center to research the golfing machine. And they found three things in there that were not accurate. One of them was when you could make a change in the swing, and there was only three places: at address, and then at the takeaway and transition. Otherwise, there's not enough time to affect a change. Like you can't come down, say, I'm gonna close the club face real quick. And then another one was they wanted the elbow to reach the center line, the trail elbow to reach the center line. They said you can't square the club from there.
Okay.
Was one of the things. And so I think there were only those two things and maybe something about in there about the touch part of it. that they found was incorrect. And so it's not easy to understand. I understand nobody, wants to give it any credit, but the guy did a tremendous job of researching it. And, a lot of the stuff that he said is still accurate, is still being taught today by the guys involved with the technology, so it's not, I remember I went to Switzerland, did a clinic in Switzerland for the Swiss PGA, and I came back and they said, and I saw something there where they were talking about, well, you don't want to handle drag. Whatever you do, you got to let the club go, let the club go, release the club. This was right at the height of that bash the golf machine stuff. And I went back and looked, and I had 29 students, and out of the 29 students, 28 of them didn't have enough shaft length at impact. I mean, there wasn't any of them that had too much, that had
Right.
more than 10 or 11 degrees of shaft length, so I'm sitting there going, well, I'm going to keep teaching it until they do too much of it. But I don't, so anyway, I think that's what happens is that guys are trying to make a name for themselves, and they're going to poo-poo something that they don't necessarily contribute to their success.
You talked early in this, you talked about the Golf Digest days where, everybody sat and shared, and I wish it was more like that and not as combative, because one of the reasons Jackson and Wayne and Justin Parsons and I started doing this with these young guys is because, like, it's nice to just sit and share ideas with people that have had a bunch of success. And, if, I don't think anybody's saying to any of these people coming up, like, you have to do everything we do, but hey, here's some things that I've done that work or whatever, I just wish, some of these teaching things, it wasn't as combative. Now it does seem like it becomes like everybody's. I remember you stood up at the one, there was a teaching summit somewhere when Brandel was there, and and he had written that book, I think, and kind of bashing different types of teaching and stuff. And I guess, I don't know if it's just social media, but it seems like everybody's combative now, oftentimes, and wanting to poo-poo or shoot down other people instead of maybe listening to what they have to say.
Well, I think that's you see that more just because people get most famous by being recognized by how many appearances of social media. You've got to have something that draws people's attention, and nothing better than controversy to do that. So I think it's the nature of the business now, more than anything else. Looks like we got a question.
We do.
Right. Yeah, Jackson, go ahead, buddy.
Yeah. Mr. Cook, is there any common theme or pattern that you've seen that has caused players to hit beautiful iron and wedges at high level, but struggle to control the driver, or vice versa?
Yeah, I think so. I
Wow.
think I think what you have is obviously you're going to have steeper swings with the shorter clubs and the wedges and so forth, and you're going to need a shallower swing with the driver. And so whether you're talking about swing plane being flatter or being more upright, I think that's what you see when you see good iron players, particularly short iron players, and not good drivers. Is that you have to remember that the things that produce the right angle of attack, there are certain principles. Like one is so to hit a good drive, you want to have your center behind the ball. Whereas when you're hitting a good knockdown wedge, flighted wedge, you want to have your center in front of the ball. If you when you hit a good drive, you want the club coming from the inside. That's what keeps it shallow. Whereas with an iron, you can be steep and be you're coming on a steeper plane and hit a good shot because you've got plenty of loft to de-loft the club and still hit a good shot. In fact, that's what you want. You want to have low launch, high spin short irons and you want to have high launch, low spin drivers. So you have to make an adjustment in order to be able between the two, and the adjustments don't necessarily have to be dramatic. It's just that you have to recognize what is it that makes me steep and what is it that makes me shallow. And so that's what I see as a difference. So if you look at somebody like, let's say yesterday, we had two of the best drivers on the planet, and they both are real shallow. They're both real end out. They hit up on the ball a lot. But if you watch them when they're hitting the wedges, you're seeing them flight them down. You're seeing them get, from where Bryson was hitting his wedges out of that hard pan and all that sort of stuff. He had to get steep. And Rory took a lesson from Butch, and Butch told him you need to flight your short clubs down better to play better, and that's helped him. And so it's just recognizing uh, the steepness versus the shallowness that are needed for those two shots.
Awesome. Jackson, question?
I had a question just about draws versus fades, if you wouldn't mind talking into that a little bit about what you've seen in good players.
Well, basically, what I teach, because of my experience, I guess, is I like to teach everybody up through high school to hit a draw, boy or girl, and I like them to hit hooks because they hit them farther. They hit their long clubs better with a draw swing plane and so forth. And then after that, women I always teach to hit draw for their whole life. I don't want any of them to hit fades really. And I've got some long hitting girls too, but they wouldn't be long on the men's tour. Let's put it that way. But the guys, once they get to college, if they're long hitters, then I would teach them to start taking the hook out and I prefer most of them to hit a fade. I was working with Bo Hostler, and Bo Hostler wanted to hit a draw. And I said, Bo, you got 180 mile an hour club hit or ball speed. And I said, you can't you can't control a draw. You're going to lose your ball twice around if you keep hitting a draw with the driver. He said, well, that's what I see. That's what I see. And so I said, well, I can't help you if you don't want to fade your driver because you're last on the tour in driving accuracy. So if you want to get better, you need to improve that number. And so I sent him to Dana Dahlquist. I said, I know a guy, he'll let you get that shaft pointed to the right at P6. And Dana would let him do that, and he let him draw it, but he still didn't improve his driving any. And now he switched over to John Scott Rattan, and he came to John Scott and he says, I want to hit a fade. So he's finally learned. He was a super stud player in college and high school.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he should have won 10 tournaments by now, but that driver held him back. And so I teach fades to long hitting college players or and some high school players, not many. I've got a couple now, though. They're so long now. And tour players, I think they were better off playing a fade. It's easy to hit, it's easier to keep in play. And you don't lose your ball nearly as often with that shot as you do with the others. Then I think the draw, though, still is the preferred ball flight for almost every other player. That means all amateurs, all ladies, all up to high school players, and even club players if they're not low handicap or not in college golfers. I teach draw to almost all of them. So it's a funny deal. You work on some, you're trying to get them take the handle inside and get it across the line so they can swing out and hit a draw. And then a little bit later, you get some long hitter, and you're trying to get them to take it outside and lay it off and swing left and hit a cut, and so you have to be able to change your modus operandi there. That's for sure.
That's great influence. I mean, that's great info there, I think, for folks teaching all different skill levels. Jackson, you got another question pop up?
We do. From Christian, what would love to know what type of pattern you try to put your retired 60 and older gentlemen into, the kind that typically play 3 to 4 times a week but don't practice. I found they're always looking for more height and distance.
Yeah, a draw swing, almost always. And if you need distance, you should draw it. If you don't need distance, in other words, for the league you're playing in, you can play a fade. And at the tour level, I would guess, I don't know, maybe you can tell me, Tony, what you think, but I think probably 80% of the pros play a fade now.
Yeah, straight on fade for off the tee.
Yeah, for sure.
Most all of them, you know?
Yeah. And the shorter hitters out there need to draw the ball. Kuchar and Zach Johnson and guys like that need to draw the ball. They don't have enough speed to compete out there distance wise with a fade.
No question about it. And I mean, you just, with all the TrackMans and all the information out there too, it just seems like less and less of the higher speed young people come to you wanting to hit draws. They kind of understand the numbers, and they understand path and face a little bit, and they've all learned to try to zero it out a little bit, or hit a pretty straight ball to a ball that falls right. Kind of seems more like what you see teaching with the young folks coming up.
Yeah, I mean, it's
Jackson, we got any more?
No, sir. Keep firing, T.
No, go ahead, Chuck. What were you gonna say? Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
I don't know. I forgot. I'm so old. It doesn't last long.
Not that old. Shoot, you're doing better than most. Okay, so you kind of touched on this a little bit with that last question, but one question that I get from a lot of folks is like, do you teach, tour players and good players really any different than you would teach a club level player or a guy at a club that wants to be pretty good? I was just curious. You touched on that with shot shape, but like what you're trying to get them to do, impact, and all those things are pretty much the same, are they not?
Yeah, well, I teach, like I said, what I'd like to see were those 3 imperatives. No matter what type of ball flight they're playing, you can adjust it to create the ball flight you want. So I teach first impact. So I want them compressing the ball. I teach long chips and knockdown punch shots first. And then I deepen it with the shoulder turn after they hit the punch shots, but to try to get them to feel they're doing the same thing. And this would be true for anybody. I did it. Brian Watt's son, Kevin, came in the other day, and he was a new student. And, we started off with long chips and punches. And he's a good player, plays for Kentucky. And so I do that. Mm-hmm. And so it's try to get a good impact position. And then the next thing is to get it on plane. And you've got all of these options that you can have. You can go upright and shallow it down, drop it down. You can go flat. You can go on plane. You can go just a little bit above plane or whatever it is. But as long as you come down on plane, it doesn't matter. But you have those options. So like with Jason Duffner, he'd never shallowed a club once in his life. He was always either down on the same line he went back on or steeper. And so he couldn't swing upright. If he swung upright, it'd be so far over the top. That's where he was when I met him. So, you have to figure out what do you got to do to get somebody to come down on plane. And then most people, I would say, most good players, well, you want them slightly above plane. And because of the fact that their sequence is lower body first, which tilts their spine and shallows the club. And that shallows it to the plane. And and then everybody I want them to have lag. And what lag is nothing more than sequence. It's not just one position between the arm and the shaft. It's like the foot plants and the ankle's lagging behind. Then the ankle gets over the foot and the knee's lagging behind. And then the knee gets over the ankle and the hip's lagging behind. And then the hips get rotated and the shoulders are lagging behind. And then the shoulders are rotating and the arms are lagging behind. Then the arms get to the ball and the club's lagging behind. And so that's what lag is. It's just a correct sequence of movement from the ground up. It's not like, okay, let's cock your wrist and leave your wrist cocked like that, or anything like that. It's just it's that. And so
Right.
I always try to go through that just to talk about between all the different types of players. I try to get them all to do that if they're not doing that. Tour pros, mostly the only thing you're working on, they all have good impact. They almost all have good lag. You're just working on getting them to come down on plane and control the face with a good impact position. But those principles are the same for everybody, and so you just have to pick out which principles you want you think your student would use best.
Right.
Like if you go to a good impact position with a neutral grip, let's say, your wrist would be flat, all right, with a neutral grip. If I keep my hands in the same position and strengthen my grip, my wrist is going to be cupped.
Right.
If I keep my hands in the same position and weaken my grip, my wrist is going to be bowed. So that's what fits together. So a bowed wrist fits with a weak grip, a flat wrist fits with a neutral grip, a strong grip fits with a cupped wrist. And that's what I'm talking about, matching the principles of impact with them. So like club face, the principles to control club face are your grip and your wrist position, your wrist action. That's what controls the face. It's only two things. And you got a myriad number of options in there that
Right.
you can, and then like angle of attack. Well, you've only got three things. One is you got where your center is, either in front to be steeper or further back to be shallower. You got your lag position. The late release is steeper, the early release is shallower. And you got your swing plane. The flatter swing plane is shallower, steeper swing plane is steeper. So, that's what I'm saying about, you've got all of these principles involved with all of these impact factors that control these impact factors, and you can mix and match them any way you want. Like, let's say you take somebody's a short hitter. Okay, so what impact position do I want? Do I want the flat wrist, the cup wrist, or the boat? Well, I'd probably want the flat wrist because I'd want a stronger grip. And that'll give them a little bit of cup in the wrist to get more lag to be a longer hitter. So that's how I would decide, with that student, what he would need. If somebody's, got good distance or whatever, I might go with a John Rahm grip, real weak, or Colin Morikawa. But that's why Colin's short. And even
Right.
Scotty's got an early release. He doesn't have a lot of lag in there, but he's a big old boy. So he produces his power not through mechanics, but he's very wide coming down. And swing hard at it, and that's why he sort of outruns it with his footwork a little bit, to keep from hitting it flat with that toss he has. But it's interesting. I look at swings, and that's what I look at. I just say, okay, what do they need to fit together, and what's the least invasive way of doing it, and go from there.
Jackson, I know you got one more question.
I do. With all you've seen and your experience in instruction, what do you think is missing, or where would you like to see instruction go with the next generation of coaches?
Wow, it's deep, Jackson.
I don't know. I think things just develop and move along. I think that the thing I would like to see, and the thing that I saw with the best teachers for me when I was growing up, Harvey Pennick and uh, David Ledbetter and Hank Haney and all these guys that are top teachers, is that and Mark Blackburn too, Chris Como too. All is the thing that I like to see is that their students come first, and that they learn what they need to know by what their student doesn't have, and so the student teaches them what they need to learn, and they do it, and it's because they're so interested in getting their student better that they realize, well, gosh, I tried that and that didn't work, but I know that's what they need, so I've got to figure it out, and go from there. And then need to go search and do different things. And I like to see that continue, where it's a student-centric philosophy of instruction, more than anything else.
That's
Beautiful.
awesome. Chuck, thanks so much for taking time. You're one of the best. I always enjoy the opportunity to chat with you and hang out. Always learn something, but hopefully get out to Austin soon and hang out a little bit. Maybe you have some Italian red wine I could have a sip of.
I have lots of Italian red wine, but I don't know how much we left if you don't hurry up and get there.
All right, I'm coming. Thanks so much for doing this. And I can bet you within the next hour, I'm probably going to text you a video to look at. You triggered something while I was sitting here thinking. So I appreciate you as always.
Okay, bud. Appreciate it. Jackson, nice to meet you.
Thanks.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Bye.